welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you today on Channel 9 on WJOP-LP Newburyport at FM 96.3 and on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I am so happy to welcome this morning the screening room owners, Becca and Ben Fundis, are here, and we're also grateful to them for saving our cherished cultural outlet and resource, the screening room. Ben and Becca they met working in an art house movie theater. They both led what I consider to be incredibly adventurous and creative lives. And let me tell you a little bit about that, and then we'll welcome them and start talking about the screening room. They were both graduates of Bard College. After Bard, Becca moved to Providence to pursue a degree in cultural anthropology at Brown, and what she describes as her very fun master's research took her to France to follow cross-cultural performances of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And if I'd known you could do that in a degree in cross-cultural anthropology, I might have done one myself after grad school. She returned to work in film exhibition and worked on a number of different jobs from Maine to the Hudson Valley. Becca, welcome, and thank you for coming to visit the morning show.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Ben, no slouch, returned to his home in Nashville after Bard to work in television until friends enticed him to take a break from his job and hit the road to make a documentary. With his friends, he traveled the entire U.S.-Mexico border to shoot and edit a documentary called Border Stories, which won the prestigious Human Rights Award at Internews Media Awards in Paris in 2008. And after that, he traveled back to the East Coast and took a job in the Hudson Valley alongside Becca at Upstate Films, and the rest is history. Well, welcome, Ben. Thank you for coming to the show as well.
Thank you for having us, Mary.
Well, I do want to learn about your journey to Newburyport to save the screening room. But first, I just have to ask, first, Becca, about the Rocky Horror cross-cultural comparisons, and then Ben about your documentary. So Becca, please tell us what it was like to go to France and study reactions to Rocky Horror and compare them to U.S.
It was super fun. It's funny. I mean, research brought me all the way up to Danvers. I was really close by when I was working on that project, because I was working with a troupe from Providence and then all the way up here. But it was interesting because, you know, where we think of the Rocky Horror Picture Show here as something that people perform week after week and kind of find themselves and find that their identities that they carry with them back into their schools and workplaces. In France, it was a completely different thing. So here you would hear all these people saying, I'm finding myself, and it's great. And they really identified with Don't Dream It, Be It. And in France, people were like, oh, I'm comfortable with who I am, and I'm comfortable with all the structures around me, but it's fun to be a tourist and go have someone sit in your lap every once in a while. So it was really, really fun stuff. I was interested in performance and audiences and media and performance and the spaces where they cross over. So it was a great project. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds both fascinating and fun, and how interesting that Americans used Rocky Horror Picture Show to find and affirm themselves, and the French already knew who they were and simply enjoyed being a tourist. Vive la France. Well, thank you for that. And Ben, I'm curious to hear about, the U.S.-Mexico border, that's a long distance. That's a long trek. And, what was it like making that trek and putting together the stories of the people you met?
Yeah, it was life-changing. I had left Bard after finally graduating, and I was working in television, as you said, and working with producers from CMT or Discovery Networks and stuff like that. And it was good work, and it was comfortable work, and I had a paycheck, and it was very nice. I bought a house.
All good things.
All good things. But me and my friend had cooked up this idea when he was on an extended stay with me of doing a project on borders in general. And that turned into a trip that went from Brownsville / Matamoros, Mexico, all the way to Tijuana on the other side. So running over 2,000 miles, going back and forth and finding stories along the way. And we teamed up with a friend that he had met, Claire Long, and she had a lot of journalistic experience, so she kept us sort of ethically sound and sort of tied to the ground a little bit. And we made it up as we went along. We edited in hotel rooms and made 23 or so little small vignettes along the entire journey of vigilante, right-wing vigilante groups, and migrants themselves, people helping, just all different facets. We talked to 2 mayors on both sides of the border, in Laredo and Nuevo Laredo. And it was just a fascinating project. And I never went back for very long. I did for a little bit, but I didn't go. I never really went back to sort of normal work from that point on in my life. And
is that what you meant when you said it was life-changing?
Yeah, definitely. That it was very difficult at that point to not chase something that I was passionate about.
Yeah.
And I had just decided at that point, it's like, well, I could go chasing a check.
Yeah.
Or I could chase something that does my heart good.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how, the long answer and the start of how I ended up here.
It's a great answer, though. I understand, I guess once you've tasted doing something you feel passionate about, it's hard to go back to chasing something.
Right. And there's a lot of things about our world that we live in that tell you, like, well, you can't make a living out of that. Yeah. And there's lots of people that will tell you, like, well, you're never going to make it.
Yeah.
Like, well, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you can't, at the end of everything that you've done, look back and say, that's something that I'm really, really proud of, and I did good with my time. That's what I want more than anything.
Absolutely. Well, it's an inspirational story because I agree with you. Our culture is front-loaded with messages about don't take that risk, just don't do it, follow the straight and narrow, look to aim for security, as the first and foremost value in life. And that's not unimportant, but each person's balance for how much security you need as of how much happiness you need in order to live a fulfilling and joyful life is different. And some people can go for security and I think lead balanced and happy lives, and other people, they need the spark, they need the creativity, they need the inspiration, they need to figure out what is intrinsic to their individuality and be that person in the world, or it diminishes your sense of what life is about. So thank you for those stories. They're both inspiring. Well, that brings us back, though, to the incredible path that led you to buy a 99-seat movie theater in Newburyport, Massachusetts in the middle of a pandemic. Right. So tell us that story, please.
You turn to me. So it's related to the fact that we met working in a movie theater.
Yep.
We had met years before. We were passing it. We know that we were at screenings together when we were young and in our 20s.
We just went through them the other night and we were just like saying, oh, you were at that screening. It was like a John Turturro screening for Illuminata. And like, I always recognize her. She's the woman, she's the woman that works at the movie theater.
Yeah. So I worked at the theater before Ben did, and then he came along and I was like, oh, that guy. Which is true. But we had worked at the theater and we both loved it. And I think one of the things that I loved about Ben was actually he was the first person who came into the theater who really got it. And we just had a profound sense of connection, I think, around film and doing that work together. He had moved on, and I had moved on. I was working at an opera house when the pandemic hit. And I was talking with a friend, and I was looking to get back into an independent cinema because I just loved the work. It wasn't the same working in an opera house, which is still cool. Great stuff, great work. And I had a friend who programmed the screening room for Andrew and Nancy, and he told me about it. And honestly, we had been in our house for months on our own,
6
not
months
going
or something
outside.
At that point.
Yeah, it was the early pandemic. And this was the first sort of risky trip we took. We piled in the car, went to the screening room, met with Andrew, and then went right back home same day. And I think it was a whim.
we were
At
immediately
first,
enamored by the space.
We
We
were.
could see the space and the way that you can immediately see that it's put together with so much love.
Yeah.
And then hearing the story of Andrew culling together recycled materials to put the wall together that separates the lobby from the theater, and
And to raise the seats.
how they got the seats raised using video jukeboxes, like 100 video
I didn't know
jukeboxes
that.
are cut so that, and they're still under there. And the things they used to do for live performances that brought the screen up and it hooked to the ceiling, and then you had all the space down below, and it was just so interesting. What had clearly been going on there for so long.
It's a well-loved space.
Yeah.
And you can feel that.
Yeah.
So, well, your story of how you met, I think, is very romantic. Kind of passing ships in the night that then discover, oh, we were passing one another in the night, but obviously the universe wasn't quite ready for you to meet. But then the time came. So I think that's a great story. And yeah, we all remember that, you know, the early days of the pandemic and that kind of claustrophobic, isolated feeling, that call to adventure. It sounds like that spoke to you.
It definitely mixed it up. Like
Yeah.
we got an interesting, you know, jolt for, you know, we didn't have to sit in the same place, at least.
Yeah.
We got to sit in a different place.
Yeah.
So we sat alone on Plum Island.
Yeah, it was interesting. But the pandemic also gave you that moment, I think, for a lot of people. They were taking stock of what their life was previously, what it meant to sort of take this space for a moment and just sit back and look at everything. And people made drastic changes.
Yeah.
A lot of people changed jobs. A lot of people traveled and went to different places and wound up somewhere else after. And
what will remain after it's, you know, after it's subsided and after the isolation of the pandemic subsides, like what's left,
Right.
you know, and I was I remember being very adamant that like this world is not over. This is not the end of the world. And this is not the end of this world. This is not the end of people going out and communing with one another. Movies have, you know, and seeing movies communally has faced, since VHS, since you name it, so many obstacles. And, you know, you can say that it's, you know, like print journalism, that you know, subscriptions and that attendance has steadily declined for a long period of time. But
people still like to go out and see something together that gives them something to talk about, enhances their life in some way, and find community together.
It's still necessary.
So these small spaces really needed to survive the pandemic, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's a different experience to see a movie with a group of other people who are having the same stimulation for their emotions and their thoughts and their feelings. It's just a different, it is a communal experience. And it also, I think it's an amplifier. Because you respond to the movie, I think, in a more pronounced and intense way, because you sense the energy around you of the audience. You know, whether people are enjoying something or laughing at something or being scared by something, and so it just makes it a different quality experience than with your little TV screen. You know, watching Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever at home. And people do cherish that experience. I think it would be a smaller, less interesting world if we ever lost communal cinema. And I know that independent cinema is your particular love for both of you. And I did want to ask you, what is it, if you can put it into words, that you particularly love about independent cinema?
I think because it pushes it pushes boundaries in a way that, you know, a streaming service that's choosing what to show is going to think about numbers and you know, and the amount of people eyes that it needs to have on its product in a very different way than somebody that's making a movie like Triangle of Sadness or something, where it's like, no, I have something huge that I need to communicate. I have a big idea that I want to put out into the world, and people going out to movie theaters is what makes telling a story like that feasible. and some of those stories are best seen
On a big screen.
with with other
that's true.
people,
Yeah.
so that you can
Yeah.
you can gauge other people's reactions,
Right.
and
Or
you
parse
can
something that's
and you can
hard to understand.
or spend 15 minutes at the end of it, standing in the lobby or outside talking
Yeah.
about what just happened.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
where there's not necessarily a need to please the viewer, to have the viewer go on a nice romp through, there's also room for that, but where it's interesting to me is where it really challenges people's what they've seen before, seeing something different, seeing something from a new perspective.
And I'll say this in a slightly different way
Always.
too. It's just, but cinema in and of itself is not homogenous.
No.
There's the part of it that is an industry, and it's sort of made for pure entertainment. But there are people working within the medium who are really trying to make art, and I think. And across genres, it's amazing. And so we really try to focus on showing the best of different genres, and that would be from documentary to animation when they come up, but and then foreign and American independence.
Yeah, we draw the line at military propaganda.
Okay, well, fair enough.
But we're showing a movie about it too.
I'm not sure an art house audience would come anyway.
I don't think
so. Well, you took the leap of faith and you acquired the screening room mid-pandemic. So tell us a little bit about the ups and downs you've experienced. What was as you expected it might be, and what surprised you?
I think that we knew it would be really difficult to get through the pandemic. And in some senses, we're still right there. We're just trying to get the cinema through at this point. And so it was less surprising. It was just more, it was difficult. It's difficult.
Yeah.
But we're lucky to have received some federal funding. There was a really amazing grant program for theaters and agents and venues.
Yeah.
And so we received the SVOG grant, which, without it, I don't know if it would make it or if we would still be here.
It
was essential.
It would be incomprehensible how many music halls and
would have just shut down.
They would have not made it. There's no way.
Very hard to come back to life after being totally shut down.
So it was an astonishing support that they put together to get the shuttered venues operators.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what was beautiful and what was surprising, so before that to get through, because there was a whole period of months, what was beautiful and what was surprising was the community around the screening room. It was incredible. We weren't meeting people face to face when we first got to town.
That was tough.
The number of messages that we got from people and the support. So people made donations just to help float sort of the day-to-day expenses while it was shuttered.
Yeah.
And then, the surprises there were the small ways that cinemas were trying to stay alive during the pandemic, and we did those. So they were trying virtual cinema, they were trying small rentals for families and pods. And those were mildly successful, the rentals, but they
were successful in that it showed people that the place still had a pulse.
Yeah.
It was
but
not on life support.
Exactly,
yeah, not quite.
Exactly.
But just it definitely needed some fluids.
Yeah. An infusion. Yeah.
And virtual cinema was no replacement for
Yeah.
And the content was not as it's just the movies weren't there because so the distributors held their cards.
Yeah.
And then what we've dealt with over the past summer and spring a little bit was the releases of movies that were made during the pandemic. So production slowed. You couldn't get big crews together. You couldn't take a big trip out to whatever setting you needed to put your movie in. So the movies themselves were limited for such a long time. Yeah. And I think we're still living through that and catching up to that.
Absolutely.
But with some of those restrictions, I think some really interesting movies got made. Out of Spain, Official Competition really jumps out. There was a beautiful, it's set in this completely beautiful office building that obviously was probably empty. But it was.
They didn't have to compete with anybody.
So there were several instances where it's like, way to pull that off.
Yeah, interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. And then I think as well, with the festivals opening back up again this year, it's just exciting to see the content coming back.
Yeah.
Finally, it's really exciting, and so for all of the cinemas that made it, it feels like, all right, okay, we're still here.
Right, yeah.
We're still doing this.
Right, yeah. Well, you mentioned distributors and film festivals, and one of the things I know I've always been curious about is how do you find the movies that you show? And how do you decide which ones you want to bring to the screening room?
Yeah.
We try to watch everything in advance. Some distributors, there's sort of a small set of distributors that show things for independent cinemas.
Okay.
Pretty much only. They'll come to you first, and there might be a little bit of crossover with the multiplexes, but they come to us first. And so some of those, the content that's coming from them is like a no-brainer. Like Searchlight Pictures just opened back up, and we're showing pretty much everything that they're bringing out in the fall.
So they'll
and the
send
winter.
you like a copy, so you literally get to
The bigger
watch.
ones, we have to go down to
everything?
Boston.
Oh, you do? Okay.
To trade screenings.
Okay.
Yeah, you go to trade screenings if you can make it. We're often
Right.
trying to pick up our son from school at the same time that the screenings.
Well,
going
and one
on.
of those was Tar, which is the next movie we have coming up. There was a screening for that, and then following that was a screening for Banshees of Inisherin, which we
Oh.
have coming up on November 11th, I think. And the owners or the people that run the Cape Cinema were there, and they're like, "Are you staying for Banshees?" And we said, "Well, we got to go pick up our kid, and we got to open up the movie theater." And he's like, "Well, you're going to show it anyway, right?" So there's
It's a
some
no-brainer.
movies where it's like the director's Martin McDonough, and it's
So it's a reputation.
Colin Farrell and
yeah.
Brendan Gleeson. We're going to show
It's
that
gonna
movie.
be fun, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we haven't seen it yet.
It's
But
a great
for-
title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for other films, we do try to watch everything,
Yeah.
and so and so it's really there's a small degree to which
Yep.
it's just what we like.
well, I mean, that's got to be the perk.
Yeah.
The major perk.
And
But what's also cool is, we sit with a movie every day for a week or two.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And when you're showing a movie, I love the relationship that we get to a film that's different from someone who sees it one time.
Yeah.
I'm really excited
Yeah.
after having seen Tar. I loved the movie, and I'm really excited to sit with it for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
how
can't
interesting.
wait to get to know every second of it. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Kate Blanchett was amazing. So
Yeah,
it's
she's
really
phenomenal.
cool.
Yeah,
the
they've been
sound
advertising
design.
that almost full time, I know, on TV.
Yeah.
And it builds it's intriguing.
My sister's
So-
a classical musician too,
Yeah.
and I'm really and I played cello myself, and so I'm really sensitive to portrayals of the classical music
Oh,
world.
Yeah.
And I've never seen something that nailed it like this.
Oh,
in
how
such a way. It was
interesting.
amazing.
Very interesting.
Really
Very
interesting.
compelling movie.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear you talk. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I just never thought about it before, but as a professional movie watcher,
Right.
which is part of what you are,
Yeah.
you'd notice different things from scene to scene.
Yes.
I'm sure you just catch more and would
Yeah.
notice more about how, that music, they chose that because this is what's going on, or, and how the scenes connect to one.
Right.
Kind of
Exactly.
like being able to see it more like, I suppose, the director was thinking about as they
Yeah.
put it together.
Or the director of a play. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Or the
Yeah.
director of
So,
a play who gets
interesting.
to know something really intimately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so you've already telegraphed some of what I wanted to ask you next about with mentioning Kate Blanchett's Tar, but what else is coming up that you're excited about?
Oh, sure. So one of the things that we also like to do, and is because we're a community cinema and really ingrained in Newburyport and want to be part of it, is to reach out to other organizations and work with them to sort of highlight topics that they're working on. So next Thursday, we're doing a screening of a movie called And So I Stayed. It's following up on Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we're running a panel after the film. It's about 3 survivors of domestic violence who were criminalized for their actions, for trying to defend themselves after after events took place. And so we're bringing in a panel from the Gene Geiger Crisis Center.
A wonderful
to discuss
organization.
The movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they've been wonderful to work with. I
I
had
bet.
nothing but good things to say about them. And every organization that we've been working with in town, we've worked with the Peck Center for Art and Activism, the Documentary Film Festival.
Yeah.
It's great. Newburyport has a lot going on. We'd love to work more with the Senior Center where we're recording this. But yeah, Newburyport has a lot going on, and one of the things that we get to do and can't wait to do more of, and I think this is also something, you know, when we were coming out of the pandemic and people just weren't coming to the movies in large numbers yet, you kind of wanted to conserve your energy a little bit to say, like, okay, we'll show a movie and sort of save the good stuff for later. And so I think, you know, we did minimal collaborations last year. Yeah. And now that things are sort of picking back up, we saw pretty good numbers of people coming out in the summer. And I think that this awards season, this fall and this winter, are looking pretty good. And so we'll also start to throw in those little special events and a little bit more.
I think those collaborations are wonderful because those are, you know,
they're meaningful.
They're meaningful, and they're organizations and issues that have high impact in making a better world and a better community. Yeah. But film is powerful. Yes. You know, film is a very powerful way to communicate and tell stories, as you did with Border Stories, and so I think it's just a wonderful kind of synchronization of mission. Yeah. So that's
and even
really
to galvanize, even when you're showing a movie that's not going to, it's not going to change any minds for people that
like I Am a
already.
Town.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. The last event we had over the weekend was I Am a Town, with a beautiful documentary from a new filmmaker named Misha Richter about Provincetown. And he grew up there, and it was just a beautiful meditative piece the place was full, and the Q&A was wonderful. Oh, wonderful. And everyone had a really great experience. And it just felt really, it feels really wonderful to show an art film to a packed house.
And that's right. And then to engage people in conversation afterward, to continue the learning and to amplify the impact. Yeah. So sorry, you were going to say something.
It's a true art film too. It didn't even open in cinemas. It opened at MoMA.
No kidding.
Okay. So it was interesting and fun to be able to show some real, something that, in a different category.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's do some movie talk.
Okay.
Because it's always fun to do movie talk. It's part of what we love about movies, sharing the experience and favorites and learning from other people what their favorites are. So I have to ask you, what are some of your personal all-time favorites? You don't have to pick just one. Right. I know that can be really hard. And you can pick a director rather than a movie if you want. Sure. Because sometimes it goes that way. But just what are some of the things that have been impactful or that you've seen over and over again? Well, you always see things over and over again.
Well, it's funny because I was thinking about this. We get asked this question a lot, and I was thinking about it last night. And it relates to what we're interested in independent film, why we're interested in independent film in the first place. But we just showed Moon Age Daydream, the David Bowie documentary, and he said something in there that I think connects to this question, where at a point in his life, his brother came home from college or from just elsewhere, and was bringing in music and texts and all sorts of stuff that opened up his world. And I think like when I started to fall in love with independent cinema and foreign cinema, it was because my sisters were coming home from college and art school and showing me things that were blowing my mind as a middle school student in West Bend, Wisconsin. I was like, okay, what's this? So some of my favorites, I think, started then, they're from that period of time. And the 90s and the 80s were just really pretty amazing. There was Sex, Lies, and Videotape. That was stands out for me. But Paul Thomas Anderson, Magnolia and Boogie Nights. I was a huge fan of Hal Hartley's movies. I love Hal Hartley. And luckily, at one point in my life, I had the chance to have dinner with him.
Oh, no kidding.
It's awesome. Yeah. Having sushi and a beer with Hal Hartley. I was blessed. And I was showing his movie Trust, which is one of my favorites. And so I'd love to bring Hal Hartley to Newburyport at some point too. Todd Haynes, I could go on and on. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
But I think for me, it's directors. And also, I know that something that connects us is a love for documentary film. We both took the same documentary film class a year apart from each other at Bard.
Ships in the night.
Yeah. But I know documentary. And I mean, I think like I'd love to make documentaries someday. And we toy with the idea of doing this. But Ben also works in film. So, yeah, I know documentary is dear to you, and I'll let you launch into your stuff.
Yeah. I mean, for me, documentaries would be like Frederick Weissman.
Oh, yeah.
These, very long form, fly on the wall sort of. He's
so immersive.
Pretty much the inventor of cinema verite and the way that we see it in documentaries these days. And then, as far as narrative, Chris Marker is, one that absolutely stands out. Sans Soleil or La Jetée, another film that was remade as 12 Monkeys by another one of, when I was a teenager, fell in love with Brazil. I love movies that kind of push buttons a little bit. That Lars von Trier, everything by him, basically. Dancer in the Dark completely ruined, I think, an entire week of my life. I think I couldn't. I had a tough time recovering from that one.
And Breaking the Waves.
And as harsh
movies that
as
destroy you.
Well, I mean, as harsh, it's just so amazing to me that you can spend 2.5 hours with, some frames of an image, and you're just devastated, or you're enraged, or you're it just.
But it transforms your state of mind for sure.
Absolutely.
Which is a peculiar kind of power.
And there's so many different ways of doing that, from a comedic standpoint or from a dramatic standpoint, or and there's just when movies hit that note for me, it's just. I'm in, so it becomes really difficult for me to categorize, where they sit on any type of hierarchy because they all approach it so differently. Yeah, it's like life. It's like, what's your favorite moment that you ever had in life?
And then
it's tough to say.
Learning everything that's coming up now, you want to learn more about the form, and so you go back into film history. I mean, for me, one of the fun things was discovering Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers movies.
Oh, I love those movies.
Much fun.
Yeah.
I know.
She loves them.
Yes. But there's a ton from film history too. And that's something we want to do more of in the future.
Yeah.
Play more. We played The Godfather, and that was amazing to see. Like in the late winter, that was amazing to see again.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of these, they're films that were formative in film history because directors pay attention to other directors and learn from them in the same way that other artists do. But then they're harder to gain access to. They kind of fall into, I guess, they don't disappear, but they fall into neglect, I think, would be it. And it takes a reminder that these magnificent films from the past are there. Yeah. Yeah,
and even something that's overplayed, almost to the point of being overplayed, like the Godfather, to sort of say, okay, no, actually stop and actually watch it. Like that movie holds up.
Yeah,
it really does.
It really does. Kind of knew what he was doing there. Fascinating.
Well, what are some of the films you've shown this year? This may be unfair to ask, but what do you think is the best film you've shown this year? Or the one you've liked? That may be hard to distinguish from the one you like the most, but...
Well, that's funny.
Given that we've not shown a bad one, it's very difficult.
I think some people would disagree with
I know that. That's why it's a joke.
That's what I love about audiences, because you can know what you're
everybody's
never going to
different.
get.
You can't please everybody.
Everybody's
no
different.
way.
For me, I think one of my favorite movies this year, hands down, and I haven't seen everything that's going to be coming out in the award season. But Tar,
Yeah.
just blew my mind.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and it's still with me 6 weeks after the trade screening, and I can't wait to see it again.
Oh, wow.
Really.
The director hasn't
strong.
made a film in 16 years. This will be his
I read
third
that, yeah.
his third
The
film.
director of In the
He's-
Bedroom and Little Children.
Yeah.
When he makes a film, he's
He's been saving himself
Yeah.
for Tar.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
So-
the detail and the specificity and just the way that things are.
power.
It is
Legend.
just the most real, believable space
Yeah.
that I can remember seeing in a film.
Wow.
It's very visceral, extremely, and
And
very
this-
real, and very in your. It's very in your own
Yeah.
present. It's just
But I mean, I would say also, if I go back a full year, then I mean, I really appreciated Licorice Pizza. I know
Yeah.
not everyone did, but I
Right.
really did. And the more, it's that kind of thing too. The more you sit with something and you look at its construction, I really appreciate.
Yeah.
I appreciated it more at the end of its run than I did on the
Interesting.
day one
Yeah.
when I saw
Yeah.
it. He's just a magnificent filmmaker when it comes to his soundtracks too, and building a
Yeah.
specific world. But I dug Moon Age Daydream.
Yeah.
I thought that was, and the filmmaker had a heart attack while he was making that
Yeah.
movie.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Talk about intense. Moon Age Daydream was fun. Elvis was way more. Elvis surprised me. I was not expecting to like that at all, and
Yeah.
it was fascinating.
absolutely.
Oh.
I'm not generally a fan of Baz Luhrmann, but
Uh-huh.
I thought it was pretty.
And then small movies that were, sort of in intra Omicron time, when we were still open but not really expecting anybody to come, when we would text each other, "Oh my gosh, 6 people came!" exclamation point, and we were super excited. There was this great movie, 9 Days.
That was good.
That virtually nobody saw, and no one would remember, but it was just a beautiful film.
Oh,
just
interesting.
And
it had no recognizable actors. I'm not familiar with the director.
Yeah. And
It
it-
was just such a beautiful statement.
And he well, right at the beginning, at that same period of time, we showed Compartment Number 19.
Yeah,
And
compartment
this
number
is also-
6.
Yeah, I can't remember
Compartment number
the
6.
number.
Compartment
yeah.
number 3.
But it's something like that.
Yeah,
But
a Russian film on it that takes place on a
and
train.
it was right at the beginning of Russia invading Ukraine, and it felt strange
Oh,
to
how
be showing
timely.
a movie from
Yeah.
Russia.
Yeah.
But it was such a gorgeous movie. It was really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clearly not towing the line for Putin, the film, but
Yeah.
so we felt okay with it.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say it's moving to talk to you both because you remind me of how much I used to see a lot more movies than I do because
Yeah.
the pandemic and just everything. But oh my gosh, your enthusiasm for film is totally contagious. I'm gonna go look up the films you just mentioned. And I remember some of the directors I used to love, like Bertolucci.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm feeling like The Conformist is pretty relevant for today,
Mhm.
So anyway, thank you so much. It's just a joy to talk to you. And again,
You as
thank
well.
you to on behalf of Newburyport for saving the screening room.
Of course.
And I want to close by asking you, so how can people learn more about the screening room? How can people find out what's coming
Sure.
and learn some things about the films? So
Yeah.
what can people do to learn more?
Absolutely. There's so many ways. We right outside the door, we tend to put a little pamphlet that you can just pick up if you're in town. You can come pick it up. We have a mailing list. We send out a little email once a week, and we try to put a little personal statement up at the top.
That's actually probably the best
That's
way
the best
because
way.
it comes out on a regular basis.
You go
and-
to your
It
website.
tells
Yeah,
you
go to the
what's
website
leaving.
and go to the website and you can sign up for the email that comes up
Yeah.
every
Okay.
Tuesday because
Yeah.
that tells you what's going to come up
Yeah,
on
Great.
Friday. So
Yeah.
our week starts on Friday,
great.
late afternoon.
And the
Great.
website is newburyportmovies.com.
That's right.
Yeah.
NewburyportMovies.com.
And if
Yep.
you're not online,
So-
you can call the phone number. And
Yep.
just
Yeah.
call. We
So
leave a
for
message.
anybody who wants to learn more about the screening room and what's coming up, there's a number of ways to do it, as you just outlined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ben and Becca, gosh, it's fun to talk to you. You'll have to come back. We'll have more movie talk.
Sure, absolutely.
So, anyway, thank you so much for taking time to
you.
come on the show today. I really appreciate it. It's been just a joy to talk to you.
Same. Thank you, Mary.
You're going to go home and watch movies.
Yay!
Well, that's it for today's show, everybody. Please join us again next Thursday at 9 for the morning show. Take care, everybody. Farewell.